What's good, everybody? It's old Papa G, and here we go with some more WoW videos. So, Shadowlands officially has got their release date down. It's November 23rd, so I figured it would be a good time to really start pushing out a lot of the content while it's fresh. And for this video, I'm going to do top 5 2v2 arena comps that include a healer. There's going to be no double DPS involved in this video. But in the description, I'm going to put the link to my top 5 that has only double DPS. I think the double DPS are going to definitely be really relevant this expansion because there's a lot of burst damage. So sometimes the healer's lack of throughput heals and lack of damage, because obviously they're a healer, is going to cause issues. So because of that, I'm going to put that in the description. That way you guys can view that and have an understanding of the double DPS comps. And that's about it. So now we're going to jump into the top 5 arena comps with a healer. So here we go with number 5. We have Resto Druid and Marksman Hunter. I also included Discipline Priest as a secondary option for this comp. They both would play completely differently, but I'm going to explain each one. First, I'm going to do what I think is the better comp, which is Resto Druid and Marksman Hunter, and then after that I'll explain the Discipline Priest. So first off, Resto Druid recently has been buffed fairly well. They've went up a couple spots on the tier list. Originally, they were only B tier, but with all these new added buffs, they're definitely S tier right now. I would say it's 1A, 1B. Discipline Priest is definitely has the slight edge because they just have more throughput healing and they deal a lot of damage as a healer. But Resto is no slouch. That would call them 1B, and we're going to get into why. So first of all, when it's Marksman Hunter and Resto Druid, they can both start from stealth, which is a huge advantage because that way the hunter can choose its target. And they had really big bursts right now. They haven't seen any nerfs towards their damage, which is surprising because everyone's been expecting a big nerf coming their way, but it still hasn't happened. So hopefully that holds true if you're deciding to main as Hunter. So as I said, they start from stealth. Normally the Hunter's game plan is always the same, whether it's double DPS or DPS healer. They pop out of stealth, they choose their target, they can 2-hit to 3-hit KO if it's done properly. They're going to pop True Shot Aura, and then they're going to do double aim shot, and they're going to pop their line of sight, because after 2 aim shot crits, that person's likely going to be almost at 25% health, which means they're in kill shot territory. So since that's the case, they got to be ready to pop the line of sight conduit, which means that they can see behind pillars. They don't have to worry about anyone going behind stuff where they can't hit them. Now, when it comes to the Druid, the reason why I think the Druid is a better comp for this than the Discipline Priest is because of the stealth start. And not only that, like I said earlier, the Discipline Priest has better throughput and better damage, but like I said, having the stealth start in the beginning really is a huge advantage. So some of the buffs that have happened to Druid recently is they've had increase to Cenarian Ward. It went from 220% to 316% of spell damage healing over 8 seconds. Rejuvenation went from 72% to 104% over 12 seconds. And Life Bloom was increased from 135 to 195% of spell damage. These are massive buffs. Like, some of them have been doubled. It's just really crazy the amount of healing. All those are healing over time besides Cenarian Ward, so it's actually really good. That's always what they've been about. They're HOTS, the heals over time. They really don't have a lot of hard cast healing other than regrowth, but that's what makes them unique. Originally, that's why they weren't good, actually, because they couldn't heal through the throughput that was going on, but now they're all set to go. So out of all the healers, I would say by far Resto has the best mobility, and because of that, that also really works well with the Hunter, because the Hunter also has pretty good mobility with disengage and post haste and things like that. So like I said earlier, sometimes Resto has a hard time healing through big bursts. And they deal with HOTS. The reason why they work well with the Hunter is because Hunter has things like Aspect of the Turtle and Fiend's Death to avoid the damage, so that way they could get a couple extra ticks of the HOTS. So that's why, in my opinion, they work better with Resto than Discipline. So now I'll get into Discipline Priest and Hunter. I won't go too much into detail because I'm going to go through Discipline Priest a lot as we go on. But the main difference between the two is that Discipline Priest has better throughput healing. They obviously distribute shields, which is nice, and they deal a lot of damage, and they heal through atonement. Because they deal damage, you're going to see them a lot in this top 5 because they could keep up with DPSs and they're a healer. So it's really, really interesting how good they are and their playstyle. And that's a big factor because Hunter, a lot of times, they'll, like I said, with the aim shot, they'll do 2 hits and a Tremere shot, and someone will be dropped down to 20% health. At that moment, if a Disc Priest did a Shadow Blast and a Shadow Word Death, that target will probably be done for. So because of that, they also really work well together. But like I said, there's going to be more Disc Priests to come, so I'm going to go into detail more as we go further on into the list. So next up on the list, we have number 4. It's Discipline Priest and Windwalker Monk. This is going to be a really, really strong combination. As I said, Discipline Priest does a lot of output damage for a healer, and Windwalker does some of the strongest burst damage there is in the game. So first we'll get into Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest remain similar in design as they were in BFA. They are literally a cross between a healer and a DPS. It's pretty simple the way it works. The more damage you deal, the more healing that is done to a friendly target with Atonement. Because Power Word Shield applies Atonement, it makes it really simple to make sure your ally always has it up. Discipline Priest is pretty much the master class. It's a jack of all trades, strong CC, high damage, and great healing. You can't really ask for much more when it comes to Discipline Priest. They have even strong hardcast healing with Shadow Mend. Is probably one of the better hardcast heals in the game. Although they've seen recent nerfs in pretty much everywhere possible when it comes to legendary soul binds, it really doesn't matter. They still remain in the S tier. Like I said, their damage is really, really high. They didn't get nerfed when it comes to damage at all. And since their healing comes from how much damage they do, nothing has changed with them. And like I said, they have strong AoE healing, and they have strong single target healing because of Shadow Mend and Atonement. As we look at Windwalker Monk, a couple things have changed for them for BFA, but it seems like none of it is in terms of a nerf. I would say it's all either equal or better than what they were. Obviously, they were really strong in BFA, and it seems like it's going to be the same at this point. So one of the things that's different is Fortifying Brew is now baseline. So what it does is it turns your skin to stone for 15 seconds, increasing maximum health by 15%, and it basically acts as a PvP trinket, the one that you could get from the vendor, which increases its good survivability. It has good mobility with rollout. It has insane burst damage which obviously works good with Discipline Priest because they also have strong damage. So when they're targeting somebody down, they can really burst it down. If that team doesn't have really like an impenetrable move or like a bubble or anything like that, they're going to have a really hard time dealing with this. Fallen Order, which is a Windwalker Monk move, does insane amounts of damage right now. It pretty much is going to cause the opponents to pop everything they have in order to stay alive. They're one of the best 1v1ers in the game right now, so basically this obviously makes them really good in a lot of 2s formats. They work with a lot of different teams. One of the recent changes is Touch of Death is now an execute style move, but it's not just a regular execute style move. It's the best one in the game by far. It literally is what it says. It's Touch of Death. So once an enemy reaches 15% health, it's an automatic kill. It's an instant death. So you're really not trying to get someone to 0%. You're trying to get someone to 15%. So this really makes them insane when you think about it, because now you're just trying to drop someone down to 15%. They already do high amounts of damage, so does Disc Priest. If you only have to get someone to 15%, it is very doable. And once this becomes a 2-on-1 scenario with Disc Priest and Monk, there's no way out of it. They're 100% going to win. There's just no way around this. So that pretty much covers them, and now here we go with number 3. It might come to a shock to some people, but once I explain why, you'll definitely agree with me. So it's Discipline Priest and Arms Warrior. Obviously, I just went into detail about Discipline Priest, so I'm really going to just focus on the Arms Warrior and why it really works well with any healer, but especially Discipline Priest. So Arms Warrior is literally made for 2v2s with a healer. It's really built for it. Obviously, they have things like Mortal Strike, which is one of the strongest abilities of any melee. They've seen huge amounts of moves brought back for them. They have the best utility of any melee, and it's really not even close. That's why they're in the S tier. And let's get into what they brought back and what works well together in terms of utility with the Discipline Priest. So one of the moves is Die by the Sword, comboed with Ignore Pain, makes them literally a brick wall. They are almost invincible at this point. Die by the Sword will increase parrying by 100% and reduce damage by 30%, while Ignore Pain reduces damage by 50%, up to 1800 damage. They just are forced to be reckoned with, especially with a healer backing them, especially Discipline Priest, which is adding Power Word Shield and also dealing damage at the same time. It's just insane. Also, they have moves like Spell Reflection, and Intervene is now baseline. What Intervene does is it runs towards an ally and intercepts attacks against them for 6 seconds. This is basically taking a stun or a silence off of your healer when done correctly. You could also combo this in with Rallying Cry, which increases your maximum health of yourself and the party by 15%. All this utility and high output, along with the Discipline Priest, really makes them an insane threat. There's no question that they are in the top 5, maybe not 3, but there's just no way that they're not in the top 5 with a healer. And it's the same as it comes with 3s. They just really work well with a lot of different classes because the utility is so strong. It's really insane what they've done for them, and it's honestly a change that was necessary because they don't have a lot of healing, so the utility to work well with the healers combos well. And now we are up to number 2. For number 2, we got Resto Druid and Shadow Priest. These two really, again, it's just as Arms Warrior and Discipline Priest work well together. This combination of Resto Druid and Shadow Priest also work really well together, and I'm going to explain why it's so strong. So again, I pretty much went over Resto Druid already and the buffs that they have, and the things that make them good, and all the stuff like that, what they use, which is HOTS. One thing I didn't include was that Cyclone is baseline. But the one thing that I did mention was that they really work well with things that can keep themselves up as well, because they deal with HOTS mostly. So sometimes they struggle with throughput, and Shadow Priest is the perfect teammate for them. And I'm going to explain why it's the perfect teammate for them, because as I mentioned, sometimes with the throughput healing, they have a hard time with bigger bursts. They're still S tier, but when comboed with things that could keep themselves up, they are really, really strong. So let's get into Shadow Priest and what makes Shadow Priest great. So first of all, Shadow Priest, their damage is pretty strong. They've seen a little bit of nerf in terms of their damage, but where they really shine really comes down to their sustainability and their off heals and just their durability. They're insane with Power Word Shield and Shadow Men being really strong. They're really tough to kill. They have an impenetrable ability. Devouring Plague does big damage and obviously also does big heals. So not only are they getting the HOTS from the Druid, they're also getting their HOTS from themselves from Devouring Plague. In addition, they've seen Damnation, which what Damnation does, applies all the dots to the target in one click, so that just saves time, only 45-second cooldown on that. Their durability and sustainability is the best of any caster, with everything I mentioned, and including that, one of their PvP talents, which is a must pick, is Greater Fade. Normally Fade isn't anything, you wouldn't think anything of it, but Greater Fade really changes the game. It increases their movement speed by 50%, so now they're getting increased mobility, and it causes most, it literally is said verbatim just like this, causes most melee and ranged spells to miss you for 4 seconds, so, or until you take action. So obviously you're not going to take action, so if you basically have an evasion type of move, you have your impenetrable ability, you have Power Word Shield, you have Shadow Men, you have Devouring Plague healing you. This is just comboed with Resto Druid HOTS, so they just are really, really hard time to kill. Obviously, they spread their damage, so they're really more, this team especially is really about the longer fight, sustaining fight, and it's just really hard to compete with. They're going to do really well against teams that just burst, because the burst, obviously stuff's going to go on cooldown, and they're going to keep ticking away, and it just really makes sense why they work together. A couple other things is, actually no, that pretty much covers them. I wouldn't add anything else for them. So now here we go, we're up to our number 1, and it really, if you watch my prior videos, this shouldn't really be a surprise, but here it is. Discipline Priest and Sub Rogue. So it's the first time the Sub Rogue is on this list. I really tried to make it that there's a little bit of everything in here. Before I get into them, I just want to say, obviously, this list is all Resto Druid and Discipline Priest. They really are the best. They really are S tier 1A and 1B. Not that the other healers are bad, but these two just really outshine the other ones, and I think it's going to remain like that, at least for the beginning. And as I said, I tried to make it that there was a different DPS, a different damage dealer for every single one because the healers were remaining the same. And now we could just get into why this works well together. In my previous video with just damage dealers, my number one choice for 2v2's no healer was Shadow Priest and Sub Rogue, so really it shouldn't be any surprise here that instead of Shadow it's Discipline, because it's pretty much the same basis that applies. It's just instead of being Shadow it's Discipline. So let's get into it. Okay, so the same thing. I've already went over Disc Priest in pretty much a lot of detail, so we're going to really focus on the Rogue and how it works with the healer. So the last thing these OP sub-Rogue need right now is a teammate with great dot spreading, good CC, good damage, and obviously they have the insane heals from Atonement, and he's getting a shield. This isn't even including what the Rogue brings to the table with their evasion and their own self-heal and things like that. Smoke bomb, all that stuff, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I mean, between Sap, Blind, Kidney Shot, then you have the Fear from the Priest. It's just the CC is top notch for this team. They're gonna have a lot of damage between the both of them. The majority of these other teams have like some sort of stealth ability. Obviously, that's gonna be the same when it comes to this. So it has the best CC in the game. It pretty much works well with the majority of classes. So obviously it's going to work really well with the master class of the game, which is Discipline Priest. It could get out of almost any situation, any sticky situation, and put the opponents from a good scenario and turn the tables on them really quickly. Obviously Shadow Strike is huge damage, and it can repeatedly do it because of Shadow Dance, and it pops in and out of stealth. With the Conduit, Shadow Strike will deal its damage again for 100% of what it just did. And like I said, it's the best at getting out of the situations because it has things like evasion, self-heal, smoke bomb, and it can really turn the tables with Shadow Duel, especially for this team. And the reason why is if they got a target down to about 30% health, and now the Rogue puts that person in a one-on-one scenario with Shadow Duel, the Discipline Priest doesn't have to worry about anything. It's going to survive. It doesn't matter about that one-on-one matchup. The Rogue is just going to go in there to do its job and end it off. And as of right now, there's nothing that could be done once Shadow Duel is started because you can't trinket out of it. And they'll pretty much always have the upper hand because they can pick their target out and pick what they want to do, plan it a little bit better. And the Disc Priest obviously is more likely to survive any scenario, so that way when the Rogue goes and vanishes and tries to get out of the situation because it may die, the Discipline Priest really doesn't have to worry if they switch off to him because the Rogue is just going to reset and come right back into the matchup. And yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to them. They really are the best burst when it comes in terms of dual wielding, so they really don't have much to worry about. Alright guys, and that's it for today's video. Again, if you guys do enjoy the content that I'm putting out, if you could like and subscribe to my channel, it would be really greatly appreciated. Obviously everything is still subject to change, even though that they put the release date at November 23rd. It's not out yet, and things still will probably be changing. We have 23 days left. Obviously it's Halloween today, 10/31, so we got a lot more that can happen. But as of right now, I think a lot of the changes that have been made are probably going to stick at this point. Obviously earlier when there was no date, anything was really bound to happen at that point, but I feel like at this point a lot of stuff is going to stay the same. There'll be a little stuff here and there, but I think everything that's established and in place is most likely going to stay the same. And just look out for my other content because I'm going to be putting out way more stuff even once Shadowlands comes out. I'm going to do stuff for 3s, RBGs, and like I said, I'm going to make sure that anything that changes, I'm going to get you guys the content immediately. So as always, thank you for tuning in, guys. I always appreciate it.